Hi, everyone. I just want to thank, honor, acknowledge, and each and every one of you for choosing to be here. And just a quick introduction. I am Ryan Baro. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Clinica Technologies. And what I'll be discussing is about the security of healthcare data. But first, let's talk about what is healthcare data security and why solutions are important in the healthcare industry. As you know, data security is it's an essential part of the healthcare industry. It's for protecting confidential patient information, complying regulations, just like mandated by HIPAA. And in the past, it's fairly easy to protect patient data and to keep it secure just because the information is recorded on paper and locked and in filing cabinets. However, today, because of the innovation, because of the advancement of technology, and in this digital age, the patient records are now stored electronically, electronically on computers, on servers, storage devices, and with these electronic records, it comes with risk, data breaches, there's malware, and other malicious attacks. And today, as you know, nurses, doctors, and other healthcare professionals, they rely on technologies. They rely on computers, tablets, and it's their way to access the updated record patient data. And data may also be shared between multiple facilities and healthcare providers. Such better healthcare data security solutions are needed so we can reduce these malicious data attacks or maybe technical failure. So what is data security? And data security, it is any type of preventive measure that helps secure and protect data. The objective of this data security is for healthcare operations to develop an effective and maybe efficient plan to ensure that the, the data or patient data is secured. That's why healthcare organizations like Veterans Affairs, hospitals, they are especially vulnerable to these attacks, from hackers who are looking to gain some personal information and maybe commit fraud. That's why it is vital that healthcare organizations carefully determine the potential cause of data breaches and develop these effective security solutions that include both internal and external risk factor. And now we can talk about what are some healthcare data risk factors. So some of the common risk factors in healthcare operations um, when developing data security solutions, it includes um, this. So number one, it's the use of outdated or legacy systems, using outdated operating systems or maybe applications or um, these legacy systems or those traditional ones, it makes easier for hackers to gain access to the healthcare data. These types of system, it lacks proper security because they are no longer supported by the company that created this software or maybe hardware. That's why it is better to always upgrade to a newer version, to a more secure one who has this patch, security patch. And number two, it's these email scams with malware or phishing scams. They are becoming more complex with the emails looking like they came from the source or the original source, like the vendors, like suppliers, and opening the email and clicking these links could install malware, and it can allow a hacker access to your healthcare data or your system. And it that's why it's really important to educate your employees regarding the extra risk or extra care that they needed to do, and to never open these suspicious emails, especially from unverified source. And number three, it's the internal employees, contractors, or maybe vendors. So this healthcare data could be at risk of being stolen, shared online, or maybe obtained by disgruntled employees, uh, contractors, or vendors. And the number four, it's unsecure or poor wireless network security. So this securing data goes beyond just the wired workstations, uh, since there are a lot of healthcare organizations or companies that uses wireless devices. So it's essential to ensure the wireless networks are also secured. It has these complex passwords and security. And number five, it's the lacking of strong passwords. Another risk factor, it's really uh, using weak passwords, and most of the people use this password so they can't forget it. But you have to make sure that your password requirements are strong so they cannot be easily guessed or hacked. And you also need to verify employees that they are not using the same passwords for multiple systems and applications. And number six, it's the lack of training in security practices. When employees, contractors, or vendors are not trained correctly, they may have no idea that they are violating security protocols. That's why it is vital to train all the new staff, and uh, it is equally beneficial to conduct to also the senior staff to review the or verify the fact that they're following the proper and current data security practices or protocols. And lastly, number seven, it's always failure to always keep data secure. And one of the common cause of lack of data security is when employees walk away from their workstations and they leave it unlocked, and anyone could use the workstation and just still copy the data unauthorized. So we have to make sure that our employees understand the importance of locking the workstations or enable the auto locking features after an extremely or maybe period of inactivity. And those are the risk factors that are in the healthcare industry. And now we are going to talk about um, why why the healthcare industry needs an urgent care. What So as you may know, in the increased ransomware incidents in healthcare, it requires protection of critical systems and data. So the Australia's healthcare sector has been the target of increased cybersecurity attacks since the COVID-19. it forced the digital care into the spotlight. So the sensitive data collected by healthcare providers and as well as their increased reliance on cloud-based services or applications or telehealth, it make the industry a prime target. And based on the ACSC or the Australian Cyber Security Attack Center, um, so these are some of the indications that the healthcare industry is a lucrative target for cyber criminals. Number one is the healthcare sector was the highest reporting industry for data breaches from July 2019 to December 2020. And this is according to the NOB or Notifiable Data Breach. Um, and second is the healthcare industry was reported as the most effective or affected by ransomware um, in 2019-2020, according to the Australian Cybersecurity Center. And lastly, only 33% of respondents complete the cybersecurity assessment. Annually, according to a 2017 survey conducted by HISA, Community of Practice. So the question is why healthcare organizations, and it's because there's a high level of intrinsic and extrinsic value associated with healthcare data. So this stolen healthcare data is worth more than records from other industries because of its high value associated with a personal information. And this is based on ACSC. It announced that reportedly the incidents relating to the Australian healthcare, it increased by 85% on 2020. So that's why. And this is a report by ACSC. And based on this, they've learned and summarized the key points with that report, that the key takeaways that they've learned is number one, that outside of government individuals, the health sector is reported as the highest number of incidents during the period. And second is the healthcare sector remains a valuable and vulnerable target for malicious cyber activity because of many factors. Number one, it's highly sensitive personal data holdings. It's also valuable intellectual property on technology and research, particularly those relating to COVID-19 vaccine and research and development. And it's also the criticality of services delivered by the healthcare sector. And the pressure also on health sector organizations to maintain and, if disrupted, rapidly restore business continuity. And of course, the public trust in health sector organizations, particularly those linked to government. And also, of course, COVID-19, it has changed the threat landscape for the healthcare sector. And there are numerous new health-related targets as non-traditional entities enter the sector, and targeting extend to medical transport and supply chains. Also, existing organizations are under increased operational pressure, and therefore they are more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks and financial extortions. and also changes to social and working environments, such as working from home. It have increased attack surfaces and exposed networks to new vulnerabilities. And also, malicious actors are seeking to capitalize on a pervasive environment of fear, of uncertainty, and an influx of new entrants and stakeholders in the sector. And of course, financially motivated cyber criminals, they will continue to target the Australian health sector because of its access to sensitive data and increased reliance on telehealth and internet enabled services. That's why it is critical that health sector organizations, they must ensure that their networks are protected from these malicious cyber actors who may seek to disrupt essential services and compromise business critical systems, such as to profit from ransom. And those are the key takeaways of the 2020 healthcare or health sector snapshot of ACSC. Now, let us talk about what's really the impact on a healthcare organization. What are the impacts that can be detrimental and far-reaching when this cyber incident or data breach has happened? So this is a case study from ACSC that the banking targeted. So this is an example of phishing campaigns that on March 31, 2020, the ACSC received a report from an Australian government agency that the SMS phishing campaign, um, the SMS message was designed it to appear as though it came from government and requested that recipients click on a malicious web link that spoof on official government domain. And this website was hosting malware, which could be used to steal credentials or financial information. After the domain used in this initial campaign was taken down, the cyber criminals quickly switched to tactics. It's a new domain. A new domain was created to host the malware, and messages were redesigned to spoof the MyGov. By replacing the alpha tags in the SMS header with MyGov, the malicious actor was able to deliver these messages within the existing legitimate SMS chain between individual and services of Australia. And the ACSC, it strongly encourages all organizations to really remain vigilant against the threat of COVID-19 cybercrime, uh, including sophisticated scams, phishing emails, and malicious websites. Because the healthcare sector should be wary of being both the target of COVID-19 cybercrime activities, but as well as have their branding used for legitimacy. And the case study numbers 2 is a universal health services which faces a ransomware attack. So first, what is ransomware? It is a widespread phishing campaigns that often lead to compromised accounts, allowing further malicious activity on a network. So, for example, deployment ransomware and exfiltration of data. The threat of publicly releasing or selling stolen data increases the pressure on the victim to pay the ransom, It's a double extortion by cyber criminals. And in September 2020, Universal Health Service, or UHS, it reportedly suffered a ransomware attack. And UHS is one of the largest US healthcare networks. The attack resulted in over 400 healthcare providers being unable to access their electronic healthcare records for a period of 3 weeks. The backup processes were implemented during the recovery efforts, including the use of paper-based documentation, and some non-critical appointments were delayed. And in October 2020, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, or CISA, released a public alert to provide warning to healthcare providers against an increased and imminent cybercrime threat to U.S. hospitals and healthcare providers. So the attack and subsequent alert highlights the significant impact of ransomware uh, can have on a organization and customers. So to avoid these incidents, effective logging and monitoring, it's crucial to enable early remediation after detection of a potential compromise. And that's basically the second case study. And these are the sample impacts of a cyber incident or data breach on a healthcare organization. Number one, financial loss. Because cyber criminals may demand a ransom in return for unlocking a critical healthcare information systems or preventing public release of data stolen during the incident. Second is regulatory consequences. Regulatory authorities may act against the healthcare organization, resulting in being audited or facing legal action. Uh, for example, in accordance with the Privacy Act 1988. And of course, the disgruntled stakeholders, the organization's leadership, and the workforce will experience confusion and dissatisfaction once a cyber attack occurs. And next, it's the operational disruption. Healthcare information systems, it can be brought down, leading to organizations using cumbersome manual processes as backup. And of course, the reputational damage, the patients, healthcare workforce, and consumers may lose confidence and trust in the organization's ability to secure its data and systems. And of course, last but not the least, it's the pure or poor quality of care and patient safety. A loss of healthcare organization data assets and shutting down of systems can negatively impact patient safety and quality of care. So now let's go on recognizing this model, the 7 layers of security, or the OSI model, which is in the late 1970s. This is the International Standards Organization, or ISO. They realized there need to be a standard on how computers are networked. Given that there's a lot of models, technologies, and they develop in the open systems interconnection, or OSI model. And we did 7 layers of cybersecurity. Um, this reference to show the various layers on a network. and how everything is interconnected. So the 7 layers are the following: the human layer, the perimeter layer, network layer, endpoint layer, application layer, the data layer, and the mission critical layer. So each layer, it represents a different stage in communication, from someone typing on a keyboard to the data your system uses for the application. But this model was eventually replaced by TCP IP model, which is which serves as the basis of the modern day internet. But this model is still helpful on getting people visualize how the data moves through a network and where to implement security measures. All right. Let's drill down a little bit on these layers. So let's go on first on the human layer. So people are, the weakest link in almost every possible way when it comes to cybersecurity. According to reports, upwards of 90% of all security breaches are caused by humans. It's not so much that people deliberately letting hackers go into their systems. It's just it just happens to be the one area that is most easily exploited, and we get distracted by anything, by our jobs and our daily lives, and we don't usually fully understand the technology we're using or how to keep it secure and safe. That's right. The best approach to keeping the human layer secure is education and training, getting an education to train employees on the benefits of good security habits. Maybe regularly significantly reduce the likelihood of successful attack. The next one is the perimeter layer, and this is the outer layer of your network. And it's the point where everything connects and gains access to your data. Um, it includes wireless access points, but it also includes any and all devices connected to your network. But it wasn't that long ago that the perimeter was fairly easy to secure, and the devices that connected to your network were limited to computers. However, now you have to consider everything. There's desktop computers, there's laptops, there's printers, copy machines, cell phones, even light bulbs. And if you are uh, someone that uses IoT devices, and at this level, it's really the first step of figuring out what your the perimeter layer actually looks like. So this means cataloging all the devices connected to your network is something that's special, challenging. It's with a big work from home push that we saw in 2020 because of the pandemic. So to keep this layer safe, you have to know what it looks like, what's the structure on this. And next is the network layer. Similarly to the perimeter layer, the concern here is who and what devices can access your system. But the bigger part of network layer is what people and devices can access once they are inside or connected to your system. And the best practice for security at this layer is just to give employees and devices access to the parts of the network that are necessary to do their jobs. So that the main reason for this is that if something happens, the damage is just contained. And number 4, the endpoint layer. So an endpoint is any device that is connected to your network. And as we touched on above, the number of these devices on networks can be a little overwhelming. That is why it's important to have a good policy in place to monitor and manage these devices. And number five, it's the application layer. So the application layer revolves around the software you use in your business. It's the Microsoft Office or Slack, Zoom, WhatsApp, and everything else that you use to help keep things moving at work. All need to be secure. And the ACS you can do here is to make sure that every app, every applications that you have on your devices is up to date. So it ensures that any known security problem are fixed already on that application, and it is as secure as possible. And next is number six, the data layer. So in almost every system instance, data is the target when it comes to cybercrime. This is the layer that requires the most attention because it's the heart and soul of your business. And the kind of data that you have is going to depend on the business that you have right now. And but it could include a customer data, patient data, of course, payment information, social security numbers, and other confidential data or healthcare information that you have for your business. So it means losing this data erodes your customers' trust in your business. It leaves you open to huge regulatory fines, and for about 50% of the time, it costs your business to close. So keeping things safe at this level, it really involves file and disencryption, regular backups, and of course, all critical data and processes should have two-factor authentication and policies that ensure the data is wiped from devices that are no longer being used or maybe on the employees that resign. And lastly, the mission critical assets. So this is anything your business can survive with. This includes the operating system, the electronic health records, the software tools, the financial records, and cloud infrastructure. The challenge at this layer is what's mission critical for one business isn't necessarily critical for yours. So this means you have to determine that your business can't live without and work backward to protect it. But what's really nice about this method is it really allows you to customize what you do at each of the six layers. And that comes before the mission critical asset. While uh, each of this layer of security focuses on different aspects, the overall goal for these seven layers is to keep your business running and secure all the time. And now we are going to introduce to you what we are doing currently in Clinica Technologies, which is really adapting to an environmental approach to the data security in healthcare. So what we're doing is we have this classification of security of data information exchange. So we have the five levels on this. Level one, it's really the functional level, which is mostly the functions of like adding passwords. Level two, developmental, the security, mostly on development level. of course, the architectural level, the one that we use on cloud infrastructure, and at the same time, the structural level on level 4. So this is mostly, these level 4s are already discussed with the 7 layers previously, the OSI model. But what we want to introduce is the level 5, which is environmental. So what does environmental means? It means that all our applications that's been developed, it exchange info on the same virtual private cloud, and it's on the same environment. So there is no healthcare or no health technology that provides it currently, because most of the applications or the tools that's been used by the healthcare organizations, it always leaves the data environments. For example, using emails or Gmails, if you, as a healthcare organization in Australia, you don't want your data to be, sent outside Australia, but because if you are using email or Gmail, we really don't know how this data is being processed, how it's being sent, in what, in which server, in which, country it's being sent to. Same with WhatsApp, um, using this as a primary communication tool for your healthcare environment. If you want it to be secure, just on the environment or just on the uh, Australian country. So what we have in our ecosystem of applications is all our applications, for example, is we will just want a all of our data to be in one place, which is Australia. So all our servers, all our environment that we're using for that application, all the data is being processed on that country only, and it's not living on our environment, because we have different kind of applications. We we have different kinds of tools. We have messaging tools. We have insurance verification. We have almost everything that a healthcare provider needs. And this is where exactly the environmental structure or level is needed. This because our data doesn't leave the environment; it's the whole Clinica environment, and we are using AWS for our infrastructure, which is secured, and they also have security protocols that we're using. That's why it will be very secure. It will not live. The data will not live on your environment when you use this ecosystem of healthcare applications. And with that, um, that ends my presentation for today. And I hope you learned a lot from this talk. And if you want to learn more, or if you have any questions around the topic that I've discussed, you please feel free to email us on support@clinicatechnologies.com. And Once again, thank you so much for attending this session. Um, I hope I gave value to you and it's worth your time. Thank you and goodbye.